gamble with it. We weren't sure as a centre-right think tank whether people would want to come, whether we would get speakers, but we thought that it was really important to have some of these cross-party conversations on some of the really big issues facing the country, and felt there was a huge amount of consensus on what we needed to do to address some of those big challenges. And so we were delighted to be able to secure a really fantastic range of speakers, and no more
fantastic speakers and Andy.
Particularly pleased to have Andy. We've done a huge amount of work on devolution, on giving back control, on the importance of giving our towns, our cities, our neighbourhoods more autonomy and agency over their futures. And Andy's been doing that in practice in Greater Manchester since he was first elected mayor in 2017 and then re-elected in 2021. Little known fact, won every ward in Greater Manchester during that election. So clearly an endorsement, I would argue, not just the work that Andy's done, but of the model of the fact that when people see power being enacted locally, they respond to that, they turn out and they support it. And the fact that turnout went up in every single area where there were re-elections for Metro mayors is clearly a good thing and an endorsement of the model. So we're going to have a conversation for 30 minutes or so, ask a few questions, open it up to you in the audience. We will finish firmly at 1, so I think Andy's got to go and do some media engagements, but try and fit in a lot between now and then. And I've seen a couple of you in conversations with already in some of the other halls. Obviously a lot of questions about leadership ambitions, about the relationship with the shadow cabinet, about whether you're going to be up on the main stage, and we'd be pleased to know that we're not particularly interested in any of that. I'd more than happily spend 45 minutes on the details of bus franchising if I thought that anyone would stick around. Like, yes, please. Clearly the right audience for this. I want to kick off with a fairly simple question, which is if you walked around Greater Manchester, you bumped into a member of the public, they didn't know who you were, and you said, I'm the mayor of Greater Manchester, and they said, what does that mean? What does that person do?
Yeah.
What'd your answer be? How do you explain your role?
So before I answer the question, can I just say why I wanted to accept? Because I think in addition to the English regions is one of those things that we can unite around, and for that reason it's a really important thing that we need to hold on to. And also the thing I would also say before I answer the question is, when I left Westminster, this is why I think sometimes people misunderstand that even in this environment, the role, it's my job to speak for the place. First and foremost, that is my job. It's not, obviously I always have a regard for what the party thinks and is saying, but it's my job to speak for the place and to do it in a sort of as fearless a way as I possibly can. And that is what I do. And I think it gets misinterpreted by the Westminster watchers when they come north for a conference. But that's what Steve Rotherham does, that's what I do. And I think that for that reason it is working and there's a connection. I think if I walk around city centre Manchester, it's like most people recognise me, good or bad. I mean, that was like that as a sort of I'm not a boast or anything. I mean, I think the role has become highly visible. I mean, obviously the answer is anything in Greater Manchester with Greater Manchester in the name, Greater Manchester Police, Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service, Transport for Greater Manchester. Basically, that's my responsibility. But also there's a whole range of other things behind that as well. It's about kind of coordinating the city region at that level, providing those public services, and also building a vision for what we can be going forward. And so, yeah, a bit of a politician's answer to would be a straight question in the street, but I think people have got the sense of the role now. They've kind of got the feel for it 5 years in, and I think if any government came along, as sometimes it's whispered, that we're going to remove the mayors or end devolution, I think you'd get quite a backlash to that in Greater Manchester.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And there was a sense when the model was first created that a big part of it would be, you mentioned public services, obviously healthcare devolution, a big part of Greater Manchester's deal. It feels now that the model's shifted towards a kind of economic development focus, that those powers over particularly skills, transport, housing have become a bigger part of the model, and you hear less about public service devolution. I mean, healthcare hasn't really been on the table to date. Do you think that's just because that's where the government's attention is, or is that a natural development of the model towards those economic levers, as opposed to maybe some of the public services ones, in as much as there's a distinction between the two?
I know, and that tells me we've got more to do to get the story out about what we're doing on, if you like, social reform, the way we support people. There's a report out this week actually on health devolution from the Health Foundation, and this is a story that we're really keen to tell. It's quite an amazing story. When people saw that devolution that George Osborne agreed with the 10 leaders at the time, I think people thought it was a thing about integrating health and social care, and it has been about that to a degree. In practice, what we've done with health devolution is operate a health in all policies approach. And what we've done is we've got the health service like front and centre in working on homelessness or school readiness. That's the change that we've done actually. We've taken a whole system approach to those issues. And what the Health Foundation are going to find is that life expectancy has increased more than expected in Greater Manchester in the last 5 years, and it's increased most in the more deprived areas. And I think that is a significant finding, and it's not been, we have worked hard at this, kind of beneath the radar a little bit. That's what we've been doing. And the homelessness story itself is an amazing one. We're the only part of England where the health service came in to fund what's called a bed every night. We operate 500 to 600 bed spaces every night in Greater Manchester for people who otherwise would be sleeping rough. And it's not just a bed every night, it's the same bed every night. So once you're in that place, you can stay in that place. And that's a precondition for recovery, the stability that comes with that. People then can recover and begin a journey away from the street. I would say that scheme has been a big part of our change around healthy life expectancy for those in the if you like, the worst position. And the health service has funded that to the tune of several £1 million as a partner with us over the last 5 years. Their original reaction was, oh, we don't fund beds in hostels, we fund beds in hospitals, but we don't do it. I said, well, hang on a minute. You say you will kind of work to tackle smoking or obesity. I said, but you're going to leave my office and walk past a health crisis in front of you on the streets. And in the end, they kind of said, oh, okay, it's devolution, isn't it? You're asking us to fund homelessness. I said, I am. And they did, to their great credit. And we've reduced rough sleeping massively in Greater Manchester in the last 5 years. And that is just an example of the social reform that we've brought through that may not get the same headlines as the economic stuff, but yes, Greater Manchester devolution is as much about the social as it is the economic, possibly more so.
Interesting. And you now find yourself with a government that are very focused on the economic side of things, right? So we've seen that the kind of language is around unashamedly going for growth, that's the priority. How are you planning to, or are you planning to, pitch devolution within that going for growth type narrative? How do you pitch Devo to a trust government?
Because we're waiting for them. And we've been sitting patiently waiting for this levelling up thing that they talk about to happen. We've done the work. We actually developed Fairer Greener as our strategy for 2038, net zero city region by 2038. We have a planning framework that's been agreed. It was a hard thing to do, but we've done it. So we have growth locations already identified. So we've done it. It's not a new policy. We're waiting for a government that's going to actually enable us to do it. So there's no holding back from our point of view. If you go to Manchester city centre, I don't know if you've all been recently, but it's a pretty different sort of skyline, isn't it, to the one that you would have known growing up. That was Greater Manchester taking the Housing Investment Loans Fund that George Osborne agreed with us. And look at what we've done with it. I mean, it's an amazing change. And not one of the loans given under that fund has been defaulted on. So we have a track record of running things and doing things well. And that story, the economic story of Greater Manchester is there. Jim O'Neill, who many of you will know, former minister working alongside George Osborne, now in the Lords. He was at an event last week, Northern Powerhouse Partnership event, and he spoke of the fact that in the most recent ONS figures, Greater Manchester's productivity was the fastest improving and had actually overtaken London. Now, I've not necessarily gone through the depth all of those figures, but he said it at a meeting, and I just think something is happening, and we've done it with very little, is the way I would describe it. We've done it with basically a bit of this and a bit of that there, the housing fund. If they properly said now, we're going to back the city regions to go for growth, then I think you would see the regional economy really power on. Steve's done the work here as well. I'm not just boasting about what we've done. His plans for a tidal barrier. Look at the Mersey out there today. Look at that sort of, his tidal barrier could be global in its significance if they backed him on that. They should back him on that. Northern Powerhouse Rail, we're waiting for the government to do that. We've got the schemes. We're ready to do all of this. And if anything, I would, it's always like as though we're all waiting for Westminster. I describe Greater Manchester as the last bastion of stable government in the United Kingdom. You know, we're there, we're waiting. You know, where are you lot? You know, and I think sometimes they've got to. It's almost like they're always distrusting, and they'll have a pot, and you'll have to bid. And hang on a minute, you should be bidding to us because like we're the ones. You know, I said to the government last week, you know, we've got a vision for a B network, London-style integrated public transport system. You know, they should be almost coming to us and say, can we be part of that, please? Because we're doing it. We've got the this isn't blank page from our point of view. And I think Whitehall needs to now recognise
some of those asks are those pitches, those ideas as part of your Trailblazer devolution discussions, in as much as they're still going on. But before that, I do want to ask about planning, because there's a lot of talk at the moment about streamlining planning. That's one of the things we need to do to unlock growth. Outside of London, really, you're the only area that's been able to secure for 9 out of your 10 authorities a strategic plan, an enormously difficult process. A lot of other mayors, Labour and Conservative, very reluctant to engage in that, seen as a very politically damaging or tricky process. Would you encourage your other mayors to go for it, to get a strategic plan in place?
100%.
Okay.
100%. Because I was asked about what was called the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework, for those of you tuned into this debate, is now called Places for Everyone. At the pandemic, I was asked, "Oh, drop it now because the world's changed. You're not going to need it." And I said the opposite. I want a plan for Greater Manchester. When the world's waking up, I want people to know where we're going, where you can invest. And we did it, and it was hard. But this is why these roles are not easy. I said to Steve when we decided to leave Westminster together that I said it's going to be great. We're going to be signing up for a quieter life. We'll be able to go to gigs. It's not quite panned out like that. Yeah. It's been relentless, but I love it. I love the job. I love what we're doing. Yeah. I'm passionate about the northwest of England, as you know. I can see it change. I can see the potential. It's for us, people who grew up in the 80s. This is what we're about. It's what we love doing, and it's why the return to Westminster is. They don't understand that really. We did the Westminster thing. It didn't work for us, and now we're coming and doing this, and this does work for us. So, that planning work was critical. And again, this is implicit in the narrative about, we're going to have to make these councils do it because they're all pathetic and they won't. Well, that skyline, that Manchester City Council don't get a skyline like that because they're sort of holding back planning, do they? I mean, they get that because they are kind of forward thinking and they get out there and they make the change happen. Stockport has a mayoral development corporation based on Stockport town centre, led by Lord Kerslake. You can go there now and you will see, we've committed the money from Transport for Greater Manchester for a brand new Stockport Interchange with a green space over the top, fully electrified for the buses, tram enabled, and it's not complicated. People are starting to invest around it because it'll be a fantastic place to live. And this is the first example, I think, out of London where a town, an English town, is piggybacking on the strength of the city, because obviously they're 10 minutes away from Manchester from the train. So young people could have a flat for, let's say, half or 2/3 of the cost in Stockport, but city centre style living. But then they're only a short journey away to their work. And the former leader of Stockport, Elise Wilson, who did a brilliant job actually in really pioneering that vision for Stockport. She sort of modestly claimed that what they were doing there was making sort of Stockport Brooklyn to Manchester's Manhattan. And she's got
onto something.
It's a bit of a stretch, but still. The point works anyway.
But that mayoral development corporation model, the kind of urban development corporation, that approach is one way of regenerating. We've got very little detail on what that actually looks like. Are you
more? But we're doing it in Scotland. We are doing it. So it's. Come and tell us about what we're doing, and then maybe think about, Anyway, but we put an expression of interest in because why? Well, you can't not, can you? We want to engage with them. I can only give you the feelings of the leaders, and this was cross-party in the discussion that we had about it when we decided whether or not we should express interest. Real concern that this will be another divisive policy in that you might create a situation where jobs in one part of England get relocated to the investment zone. I mean, that's not going to feel like progress, is it? If some communities are being disinvested in, if that